In preparation for the World's Fair, Chicago used diverse styles of architecture to beautify the city and improve their status by amending their environment. The fair influenced its society and new inventions which would improve the city for years to come. The World's Columbian Exposition, also known as the Chicago World's Fair, was held in Jackson Park, Chicago in 1893 to celebrate the 400th anniversary of Christopher Columbus' arrival in the New World in 1492. Chicago entered the competition of hosting the fair in 1889, and it was up to Congress to select the location. Chicago ended up raising more money to convince Congress. The Chicago banker Lyman J. Gage raised several additional $1 million in a 24-hour period, over and above New York's final offer. The citizens of Chicago had to pay higher taxes from 2% to 3% to help pay for the construction due to insufficient funds. Chicago bested New York City, Washington, D.C., and St. Louis for the honor of hosting the fair. About 50 nations participated in the fair. It also drew in 26 million people, half of the United States population, in a span of 6 months. On the opening day, May 1st, 1893, 200,000 people went to Jackson Park to view President Grover Cleveland press an electronic key that started the water fountain and opened the fair. The exposition was an influential social and cultural event that had a profound effect on architecture, sanitation, the arts, Chicago's self-image, and American industrial optimism.
The layout of the Chicago Columbian Exposition was, in large part, designed by Daniel Burnham and Frederick Law Olmsted. It was a prototype of what Burnham and his colleagues thought a perfect city should be. Chicago used a diverse styles of architecture to beautify the city. Most of the buildings in the fair were designed in the neoclassical style. The buildings weren't permanent. They were made of iron/wood skeletons with a staff wrapping made of plaster, cement, and jute fibers. Chicago became known as the White City due to the white being chosen as the uniform color for the fair. The buildings were sprayed on with compression square guns which were used for the first time in Chicago. An important building in the fair was the Liberal Arts Building. It was 787 feet wide and 1,687 feet long. It was the largest building in the world at that time. It was able to hold 100,000 people. 1 million square yards of earth were moved to create the basin, the lagoon, and connecting canals to improve the lakefront beach area and to build a 1,500-foot pier. They created a water transit through the lagoons, canals, and basins. They used these transits as sightseeing and to go look at the panorama of the beautiful architecture, landscape effects, floor designs, and statuary, etc., never witnessed by the human eye. The work on the fairgrounds began in 1891. Workers began by moving 1.2 million cubic yards of earth at the cost of $500,000. The fair had 16,000 employees at any time, 25,000 throughout the construction. Many foreign workers wanted to help, but they already had a surplus of workers. The 686 acres of the fair used over 500,000 square feet of brick, 70 miles of plumbing, and 450 miles of electrical wiring. They also made a new systematic arrangement of roads, made diagonal roads, and widened major roads. The city also made 150 new restaurants and cafes to accommodate for the future visitors. Altogether, they could hold up to 60,000 to 80,000 people.
Chicago, a moderately sized Midwestern city on the coast of Lake Michigan, found its international identity in 1893, but before this they had to improve their status by mending their surroundings. Chicago cleansed their environment and became more sanitary. Chicago installed state-of-the-art sewage systems and got rid of smoke nuisance for the future visitors of the city. They also cleaned the foul Bridgeport smells, and for the future guests, Chicago provided house cleaning. All this was to keep the guests longer and make them come back. Chicago also improved their public services by establishing a new medical bureau to keep the visitors safe. There were multiple hospitals built throughout the fair and Chicago. Chicago also made a new disciplined force of police and made a fire department of the highest standard of efficiency. They had modern appliances of machinery located in various parts of the grounds. A perfect system of electrical signals for fires were employed. The fair is largely credited for ushering the city's beautiful movement and planting the seeds for modern planning. The White City inspired Chicago to focus on the beautification of the components of their city, in which municipal government had control over streets, municipal art, public buildings, and public spaces. This shows how Chicago was influenced by the fair and started to beautify the city. In addition, inventions were influenced by the fair. A new kind of urban entertainment, commercialized amusement parks, melange of rides, and sideshow attractions. The Ferris wheel was created. It was 264 feet high, consisted of 36 cars, and held 2,160 people. Throughout the fair, the remarkable attraction was used by 1.5 million people. The Ferris wheel was the biggest attraction of the fair. It saved it from financial ruin. It also competed with the Eiffel Tower of Paris. The fair incorporated life-size reproductions of Christopher Columbus's 3 ships, the Nina, Pinta, and Santa Maria. These were intended to celebrate the 400th anniversary of Columbus's discovery of the Americas. The ships, a joint project of the governments of Spain and the United States, were constructed in Spain and then sailed to America for the exposition. This exhibit was very popular. The first all-steel frame skyscraper was created. With this came the invention of the electric elevators. This allowed for the creation of buildings higher than the average 6 stories. The elevators intrigued rural people to come to the city.
The exposition also influenced and changed society. Women began to help in the construction of the fair. Some became architects and helped with the designing. Women started to become more independent, which set in motion progress towards political and economic equality. The Women's Building, designed by Sophia Hayden, stands as a monument to the energy and courage of women in that era. The World's Fair also led to population growth to the city of Chicago. Chicago became really popular at that time and became a place of tourism. The 50 countries in the fair all intertwining with each other caused cultural diffusion. The city was recently devastated 22 years prior by the Great Chicago Fire. The fair helped relieve the cost of the catastrophe because it caused the economy to prosper. The fair allowed more jobs to be available, and the attractions/features of the exposition also brought income. This helped the city beautify and move on from the devastating memory of the Great Fire. The manufacturing of the railroads burgeoned in the city to keep up with the upsurge of the fair. The railroad system was a crucial part of the fair because it was vital in transporting masses of people to and from the fair. They transported 200,000 people an hour for 10 cents.
The fair continued until October 30th, 1893. In addition to recognizing the 400th anniversary of the discovery of the New World by Europeans, the fair also served to show the world that Chicago had risen from the ashes of the Great Chicago Fire, which had destroyed much of the city in 1871. 1893 can be described as a turning point from steam to electrical power. Chicago's image modernized because of the influences from the World Fair. Due to the World's Fair, Chicago architecture, such as Fine Arts Building by Charles Atwood, the only building which still stands today, helped embellish the city and fix their environment for future visitors. This is because the new buildings had strong impact on people and was part of reforming the city. The fair also motivated the creation of new inventions never seen before. Society was influenced by the Columbian Exposition because it created cultural diffusion and improved society's view on women. Chicago became more beautified due to the Columbian Exposition, which caused cultural diffusion and new inventions. Chicago to this day has been influenced by the fair. The Chicago we know today would have never came to be without the World's Fair of 1893.